Before nuclear bombs were invented, we did a lot of experiments to find new ways to hurt our kind. For example, one of the earliest homing explosives was actually pigeons strapped with explosives called Project Orcon. There was a bouncing bomb that would bounce on the water all the way to reach its destination. But the weirdest bombs were crafted with the help of rodents. Welcome to Weirdly Interesting. Today, we are not walking away from explosions that involve animals. Have you heard of the bat bomb? No, it's not one of those fancy toys that Batman deploys to stun his enemies. This was an act of vengeance. Sure, you are Batman, but we're not talking about street crime. We're talking about war. Japan's story of the Second World War is highly interwoven with the USA. The two countries got involved in World War II when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor unprovoked. But when Pearl Harbor happened on December 7, 1941, one man vowed revenge while being on a vacation at the famed Carlsbad Caverns, home to excellent spelunking and about 9 million bats at the time. Yeah, I think that's exactly how little S. Adams looked when he saw Mexican free-tailed bats and thought, "These bats will be the instrument of revenge for those that we lost." Adams, who was a dentist from Pennsylvania by profession, sent his plan to the White House. Bats happen to be the fastest moving animals when flying in a straight line, and because of their small size, they would be able to carry bombs to all critical nooks and crannies of Japanese cities, especially when 9 million could be armed. Think of thousands of fires breaking out simultaneously over a circle of 40 miles in diameter for every bomb dropped, he later recalled. Japan could have been devastated, yet with small loss of life. It was honorable of him that he wanted to hurt the infrastructure with a minimum of life loss. He also happened to know Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of President Roosevelt. And so, even though the idea of bat bombs on paper sounded bat guano crazy, it was picked up by the National Research Defense Committee. Renowned psychologist Donald Griffin was asked to look into it, and the man conducted some groundbreaking work on bats' echolocation strategies. According to a presidential memorandum, the president's men started working on a dentist's idea to turn bats into bomb carriers because they commented, and we are paraphrasing here, "Griffin approves and he is not a nutcase." Oh boy, a lot was riding on the poor psychologist's reputation. Meanwhile, Adams demonstrated dummy tests at Washington, and it impressed the authorities enough that the U.S. Air Force gave approval for investigations to begin in March of 1943. The operation came to be known as Project X-Ray. Later, the project was transferred to the Army, and a huge number of soldiers were assigned to catch thousands of bats with nets at caverns around the Southwest. But most importantly, tiny bombs were designed for them. The next challenge was to figure out how to transport and deploy the little guys. They accomplished it by shipping them in hibernating mode. This was not fun for the little flying rodents, as they were put on ice trays to be cooled enough that their bodies will force themselves into hibernating, thinking it's winter already.
And winter is coming.
We got the bats as safely close as possible to the coasts of Japan. But how would we launch them in Japanese cities? Apparently, somebody thought just opening their cardboard container would suffice for them to fly to their targets. But of course, that didn't go as planned, as one general's car was toasted along with a hangar. Bats weren't aware that they were employed for an air raid, so they needed to be fine-tuned. In December 1943, Marine Corps took over Project X-Ray, and there was a total of $2 million of expenditure to conduct 30 demonstrations. But then, bat bombs lost their hype to something far more powerful and efficient, but also massively deadly: Eisenhower's atomic bomb. America's cousins across the pond also intended to use rodents for deploying explosives, but their idea was much more macabre and chaotic. The inception of rat bombs happened before little Adams thought about bats, and after the cat bomb proposed by an intelligence agency of the USA proved to be a dud. It was the year 1941, and Germany was blitzing across Europe, subjugating anyone in their path. The Luftwaffe was raining bombs down on the cities of Britain, and U-boats were inflicting terrible losses all along the Allied shipping routes. Britain was in desperate need of a wonder weapon to pose a real challenge to the Germans, and they found it not in their armory, but under their floorboards: rats. Charles Fraser Smith was the head of Section 15 of SOE, and was the man behind the inspiration for Q from James Bond books and movies.
Were you expecting an exploding pen? We don't really go in for that anymore.
He was given the responsibility to come up with a wonder weapon which would prove to be the bane of German armies, and he surprised the British authorities when they proposed the rat bomb. The concept was as simple as it was bizarre. Taxidermy a dead rat and stuff its behind with plastic explosives that would have to be secretly deposited to the German coal supply. They were hoping that when these rats would be shoveled into the German boilers along with coal, the intense heat would detonate the rat, and the German infrastructure like steam engines and military bases would be annihilated. A rat is skinned, the skin being sewn up and filled with PE to assume the shape of a dead rat. A standard number 6 primer is set in the PE. Initiation is by means of a short length of safety fuse with a number 27 detonator crimped on one end and a copper tube igniter on the other end. The rat is then left amongst the coal beside a boiler, and the flames initiate the safety fuse when the rat is thrown onto the fire. Or, as in the case of the pencil time fuse, a time delay is used. But in reality, things didn't go as well as the British were expecting. The very first batch of primed vermin bodies was seized by the Germans in what must have been one of the oddest discoveries their army ever made. The secret was blown and the mission had failed, yet this did not stop the Germans from organizing mass searches among the coal piles for any stiff, strangely shaped rats. Apparently, Germans were also quite impressed by the ingenuity, and deactivated rats made their way to the German museums. However, the worst idea definitely goes to the Soviets, who tried to strap landmines to dogs and train them to slip them near German tanks and run away. Okay, we know Stalin was evil, but putting poor doggos in danger is just another level of villainy. Tell us in the comments which other animal you know has been used for bizarre weapon purposes. And as always, thanks for watching Weirdly Interesting.